And, okay. All right, we are recording. All right, so first thing I wanted to talk about the, share my screen here and talk about this. So the midterm, yeah. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Good. So, all right, so just a few things. If this helps you, if it doesn't, maybe you're not wanting someone, maybe you didn't get any of these wrong, but this figurative sculpture from ancient Greece, and remember, this is like the Greeks imitating an Egyptian sculpture and doing it very well. So that's Greek, not Egyptian or Roman. And this term, rustication, sometimes several people wrote it down as rustification, and I'm not sure where that's coming from, but I will say that every semester I have taught this class, someone or some number of people have confused that term and called it rustification. No idea why. All right. Now this chair is called Savonarola chair, and the significance of the design is this X-frame follows the model of Egyptian furniture, the Roman sella currilis, and really it is like a descendant of the sella currilis. Mechanically, the fact that the chair is foldable could also be considered significant, making it more easily transportable. And then down here, I found out more information about this. I was just looking up information and found this very interesting short article from the website American Express Essentials, which is a little surprising to me, but the information is good. So if you're interested, this document is posted in the quizzes and exams section. So if you want to have a closer look at that, go right ahead. There's a link to that website. Question 13 was about the printing press and the significance of the printing press. That's during this time period, so 15th century, in the 1400s, and then beyond. The printing press allowed ideas and technical information to spread more quickly. This is a period of time when classical texts such as Vitruvius were, I guess they were kind of recovered. Some books were, some of this knowledge was preserved by Arabic scholars in Northern Africa and what we call the Middle East. So these texts came back, and the ability to print them in higher volume and uniformly allowed the ideas to spread more. I do mention this because I don't want you don't want to get ahead of yourself. The printing press in the 15th century did not immediately make everybody literate. Literacy is estimated based on how, the ability to sign one's name, which may or may not be a good indicator of literacy. It's estimated that 11% of the population of England and Germany were able to write their own names. And that's not very much. And this is about 50 years after the printing press. But by 1750, it rose to approximately 60%. So it definitely helped. It just took a few centuries to get literacy up to a significantly better level. All right, so question 14 and 35, that was repeated by error. Renaissance style is an attempt at faithful, so this is actually a comparison between Renaissance and Baroque. So Renaissance is first, and it is an attempt at a faithful reproduction of Roman architecture and ornament. Baroque is a departure from the strict classicism of the Renaissance and offers a more theatrical, creative, and unique variation of classical style and ornament. And then this chair, what makes this chair Baroque? The ornate, exaggerated scroll motif. This is just, it's very active and dramatic. That's what makes it Baroque. And then the chair of Peter, Cathedri Petri, is the symbol of papal authority. And in terms of chairs or furniture, it's an example of a throne or a seat of honor. Question 30, a bergère is an upholstered armchair with the space below the arm closed or solid. So there, as opposed to the fauteuil that this is open below the arm. And question 32, the significance of mirrors. They demonstrate the owner's wealth because mirrors were expensive to produce, and so they cost a lot of money. They were really like a new thing. Mirrors of this, like mirrors in larger scale mirrors that were of better and better quality. So mirrors also demonstrate French technical leadership. In Venice, the Venetians were first in beginning to develop modern mirrors of higher quality. But when during the reign of Louis XIV in France in the 17th century, the quality of mirrors improved dramatically, and the French monarchy's patronage of these workshops that produced interior furnishings really helped to drive quality, drove it upward, not downward. Mirrors also can have the effect of increasing the apparent size of a room just by reflecting an image of the room back to you. They also improve interior illumination by reflecting candlelight or sunlight into all around the room. So, and this low stool, the pliant, was used to reinforce the authority of the French monarch, beginning with Louis XIV. When permission to sit in the presence of the monarch was granted, and at first, when Louis XIV was first monarch, he would sit in an armchair on his throne, and everyone else had to stand. And eventually he relaxed that, but because they would go on for hours sometimes, and it was just too difficult for all the royalty to stand and just stand there and wait for him to be finished. So what that low stool does when you did sit, it places the sitter very low compared to the monarch, creating a literal and symbolic hierarchy between the two. So hopefully that helps answer some questions. I did write individual comments on exams, but this, if I missed anything or wasn't as thorough as I did here, then this would be a way to check that. Any questions about that?
Nope, I don't have any.
All right. Okay. Well, here, then let's talk about this. So, if you may have heard the term Beaux-Arts applied to art or architecture. This is the Paris Opera, which is it's an example of what's like neo-Baroque, as one way I've heard it talked about. Clearly symmetrical, which is a very Baroque trait. And really this is falling within the Victorian era. So Beaux-Arts style overlaps. It really it's kind of a part of so like the Victorian, just like revival styles of neoclassicism. But the idea is that this is these are meant to be like impressively large or just grand in scale. So I guess with Beaux-Arts style, the scale is really a part of what makes it so. Now here is a photograph from the School of Fine Arts in Paris, or École des Beaux-Arts, which is really where the term comes from. And the École des Beaux-Arts was a school that promoted neoclassicism, and it promoted it as really the only way to be an artist or an architect. Copy the classics, really follow that example, and that's it. That's really it. The later, when we talk about the modernists in the early part of the 20th century, like the Germans at the Bauhaus, I've read this, that an architect going to school in this era of the middle to late 19th century would have been taught that the best thing you can do is learn to follow the example of the Greeks and the Romans, maybe the Egyptians a little bit, because they really have, this example is so excellent that you really can't expect to improve upon it. So that's really not a very, as a young, creative person, that's really not what I would want to hear. And that attitude, being told that the best stuff has already been done, really is one of the things that drove these artists and architects in the late 19th, early 20th century to come up with something new. All right, so here, this is a wood engraving of students submitting work. And so there were competitions to get in, and then competitions for the Prix de Rome, which would award the student with a it's kind of like a residency in Rome. So this is 1893. This is the year of the Columbian Exposition in Chicago. This is also around the time where modern buildings are starting to appear. And there's still this very strong current of classicism, and it's just a very conservative approach. So students would do work of this quality to compete with each other for either to get into the École des Beaux-Arts or to win awards. Beautifully drawn, beautifully painted. So this is a watercolor of a section. And just like the subject matter of it, this is the staircase of the palace of a sovereign. This is this is for the upper echelon of the world, of European society. Nicely drawn. It's a really a very impressive perspective drawing. And you can see it looks, well, actually it looks not unlike this. It looks a lot like the Paris Opera. Here, House of the Centenarian at Pompeii. So This is Pompeian style. I mean, it was not always a direct reproduction of Roman or Greek, but sometimes this is a this is a like a this house as it would have looked restored. And I like history, and I would love to be able to go into a house like this at Pompeii as like when it was built and see what is it what was it really look like when everything was new. But that's not something that's not contemporary. That's more of that's a historical exercise. So here the Paris Opera by Garnier, sometimes referred to as Garnier's Palace. And this was started during the reign of Napoleon III. So there was a little mini dynasty of Napoleonic emperors in the 19th century. But you can see all of this classicism. If at this point, I would hope that you could look at that and see that this is of a certain style that would link back to the Baroque, the Renaissance, and the Romans and the Greeks. Definitely not Gothic. Okay, so here's a plan. So it has this like interesting kind of lozenge shape. This is from the Baroque era. And there's Eliot, wants my attention. So here's the grand staircase of the Paris Opera. It's really meant to impress. It is spectacular. It isn't, but it is a modern building, so it's really a modern auditorium. But it's all, it is all designed and decorated in this neo-Baroque style. Now, there is Beaux-Arts style architecture in the U.S., not as decorative. So this is the Boston Public Library. Libraries were one type of building that got this treatment. Inside, it's kind of nice. The Chicago Public Library, which is now the original Chicago Public Library, which is now the Cultural Center, also has elements of this. So you can see definitely Corinthian capitals, marble. Those murals are more like 19th century. It's a little similar in style to some of that stuff that we saw, like William Morris, although William Morris's stuff is more stylized. But these would all be like mythological scenes from the ancient world. The reading room. See, there's the domed ceiling. So the interior, it looks like a Roman building, or maybe a Baroque church. Pennsylvania Station in New York City, which is unfortunately it was demolished in the 20th century. But this looks, it has these like Roman groin vaults. Sorry, my boys are misbehaving because I'm not paying attention to them. Roman, but also like the scale. So it's like it's the grand scale, the massive architecture is what makes this Beaux-Arts. Also, the period too. But this is a large public building, and It is just, it's almost like it's meant to look like the baths of Diocletian. And this, we looked at the iron tech, some of the iron structures last time. And here again on the concourse of Penn Station, you have that iron structure with like the skylights to let in light, and it's really much more industrial. So you go like this to this. This is practical and utilitarian. Beautiful. I love this stuff. This is gorgeous. We talked a little bit about the Columbian Exposition last time, and so here's a photograph of it. I believe they refer to that sculpture as Big Mary. It is the Columbia. There's a female personification of the continent, or of the United States, and it is Columbia. That was used, I believe, it's pretty common into the 20th century. But so the Columbian Exposition ended up getting a Beaux-Arts style treatment. It wasn't supposed to. The architecture firm of Burnham and Root, Daniel Burnham and John Root, were given the task. They won the task of designing and organizing the Columbian Exposition in 1893. The 1889 Paris Exposition was, it was their competition. The world was watching. Chicago got this. Chicago won the competition to host it, and there was nothing here when they got it 4 years before, when they were awarded the fair. There was nothing here. This is down near the University of Chicago, and all of those buildings are temporary. They were supposed to be designed. John Root was supposed to be the one who oversaw the design of the fair, but he died of pneumonia about 2 years before the fair. So I believe it was 1891. And Daniel Burnham then had to do everything himself. And he was having huge problems with the site. The site kept flooding. The ground is just terrible and not really suited for this. And so he had to call upon architect friends from the East Coast, and they were all into Beaux-Arts style of architecture. So that's how this ended up being, getting that look. One permanent building came from it, and that is the Museum of Science and Industry. So we do have one building that is a link to the fair, to the Columbian Exposition of 1893. So it was that was the Fine Arts Building. Here is a painting of the White City. They called it the White City because everything was painted white. If you read the book Devil in the White City, there's a little bit there about how that came about as a kind of last-minute attempt to fix a problem, and they painted buildings white, and they decided it looked kind of good, and so everything got painted white. Here is a building designed by Burnham and Root right around the same time, the Reliance Building. This building was restored. These buildings, like the Reliance Building, and then one block, I think it's either south or north, one block away is the Chicago Building, and they both have this similar style. It's this modern high-rise for the 19th century. There is ornament, but it's not, the ornament does not overpower you. It is a tall building. It takes advantage of steel frame construction and the new technology of elevators. And it is really beautiful. I really love these buildings. And Chicago was the place where tall buildings really started, because there was much more interest in new ideas in Chicago as opposed to the East Coast, where things were still very conservative at the end of the 19th century. And a lot of architects from the East Coast ended up moving to Chicago after the fire because there were so many opportunities to build things. And so Burnham and Root, Louis Sullivan were some of the leaders of architecture in Chicago at this time. And Frank Lloyd Wright came along as a youngster around this time and stirred things up too. So there you can see this terracotta, this like a ceramic block. Very nice, and that repetition, the opportunity to create this vertical pattern was not lost on them. Let's see, does this have Chicago windows? No, this one doesn't really have Chicago windows. Chicago windows are something that they developed for these tall buildings for ventilation, where you have a large window and then two smaller windows on the side, and the large window is just one single pane of glass and doesn't open, and the side windows are sash windows that move up and down. Here's ground floor, and that is the Atwood Cafe in there, which I've been to. It's a nice experience to eat at the Atwood. I'm not sure what's going on with it now. Here's the interior elevator lobby. Nice, some nice understated wrought iron ornament, some nice tile work, a little bit of marble. And I mentioned Chicago Public Library, which is now the Chicago Cultural Center. Have any of you been to the Cultural Center?
Yes, but a long time ago.
Yeah. I recommend it. Half of it was like the interior is like kind of like a federal style, since it was a public building. But a lot of this, like this Beaux-Arts style, which is really more like you can see, like some that border up on like some of the, you can see some Greek fretwork in the in the tile up above, but it's really pretty beautiful because for all that ornament, it's still very light. And well, one of the domes at least was by Tiffany, and it is the largest Tiffany dome in the world. Louis Comfort Tiffany designed some of these like domes with his glass, this like beautiful glass design. And the Burnham Plan. One of the things about the Burnham Plan, which you may know, is that they did not want development on the lakefront. They wanted to keep the lakefront open as a park area for the residents of the city. And one of the reasons that I believe is also true is that the Daniel Burnham and others who had offices along Michigan Avenue, they didn't want development on the lakefront to obscure their view of the lake. So, but I think it's, it's a really, I guess it's just like a kind of a nice feature of Chicago that, like I live in Chicago in the Edgewater neighborhood, which is like up at the north end of what is, technically it's all Lincoln Park. And, I live far north of the Lincoln Park neighborhood. But the parkland, you can just if I wanted to, I could walk from my place over to the lake and then down along the lake, um, all the way until I get downtown, and then keep on going to the south side. It's really, it gets broken up by a few, like, in a few places in the city center, but it's a, um, it's a very nice, um, it's a good example of planning. All right, so large residential Beaux-Arts style mansions. The Vanderbilt family, wealthy family. Um, this is the Breakers, one of their mansion in Newport, Rhode Island. Now, this is, um, now this looks more like looks more sort of like some of that. Um, well, I'm gonna say neoclassical. It's Beaux-Arts style because of the scale, but really this is like looks like it's a faithful reproduction of some of the neoclassicism of about 200 years earlier, or 1892, 1790, yeah, maybe like 100 or so. But it's really well, it's beautiful. It's kind of frozen in time in a way. It does look, it looks awfully Baroque. And the fact that it's built in the United States at the end of the 19th century as this attempt to recreate the most spectacular palaces of Europe is not very progressive in terms of its ideas about architecture. It's traditional, conservative. This like very light, understated Roman paneling. And it's yeah, it's kind of nice. Nice when they lay off the ornament a little bit, isn't it? This one is a Vanderbilt mansion, the Biltmore, and this is Gothic. Nice winter garden. So similar to other Gothic revival styles, the appearance of it is Gothic, but it's a modern building, or it's just it's designed the interior, the exterior and the interior are all designed to suit a I guess modern client. Oh, this is Gothic, not Gothic. Edith Vanderbilt's bedroom in the Biltmore. That is Baroque. And more Baroque. All right, so you get the idea of what Beaux-Arts style is, I hope. And right alongside, sort of getting his start around this time, is a little guy named Frank Lloyd Wright. Now, have any of you been to the Guggenheim in New York?
No, I haven't.
well, this is late in his career. It was completed the year he died. And it's very, I mean, this is kind of like a signature building of, like, the modern movement in the 20th century. Very interesting, the exterior, very interesting visually, and you see that is a spiral of space inside with galleries going off to the side, and it's this basically it's this ramp that goes all the way down, and the best way to to do it is to go up the elevator to the top and then walk down so that gravity is working with you, not against you. If you try walking up, you'd be pretty tired about halfway through. Now here's his house in Oak Park, and this is really, it's got a lot, this is really kind of in line with arts and crafts, William Morris. I think Frank Lloyd Wright personally resisted classification, but he definitely he had his he had some ideas in common with other architects, designers, theorists. So this is the furniture. He liked to design everything. So he did not like it. He did not want He didn't want a client moving in furniture that he didn't think went with his house. And he was known for being a tyrant and visiting a job site and making sure that the construction was being done as he specified, and that they didn't change it or cut corners or anything like that. He was a pest, but he designed it for to look a certain way, to be a certain way, and he wanted people to follow what he designed. He really did. He promoted the industry, so it's different from arts and crafts and William Morris. And William Morris was he did not like industrial production. He felt that it was harmful, harmful to quality. It was harmful morally to people. Working in a factory with just repetitive, making things repetitively, or parts of furniture, or doing piecework, was just something that was damaging. Frank Lloyd Wright didn't agree with that. He felt that materials can be produced. In some respects, materials can be produced in larger quantities and with comparable quality if they're done using automated processes. So this is a mural in his home. He did like Japanese architecture. So this is an image of a house in Kyoto. You see the panels on the floor. Those are all kind of like a modular system that every panel on the floor is going to be that same size. So it's all the house can be proportioned according to the proportion of the part. Here is a fireplace in his house. If you look at this image and then go back to the arts and crafts, you'll see the brickwork around the fireplace, that fireplace surround, very similar. Very similar. He definitely got some, got some ideas from William Morris. This is a photo of the Japanese pavilion at the Columbian Exposition in 1893. It was very popular. The Japan and Japanese style was very exotic to the Europeans and the Americans, and Frank Lloyd Wright was no stranger to this. Here is one of his table lamps. Lots of, he goes a little nuts with the rectangle. A lot of fussy details all over it. And interesting, looks kind of modern and industrial, but it's kind of clunky. I think the glass shade is probably the best part. And here, his art glass, I think he did art glass really nicely. This like simplifying organic imagery, trees, other kinds of plants, and turning them into these art glass windows. So here's a drawing of one for a sumac window, so the sumac design, and that's really pretty. I think that's gorgeous. And in terms of like artwork, this is like really kind of like running parallel. This is even a little bit earlier than some of the more avant-garde abstraction in painting. So he had some very good and contemporary ideas. Now he also promoted open floor plan. Open floor plan is when you have as few barriers as possible to moving throughout an interior. So if you have like a ground floor and you have multiple rooms within a ground floor, traditionally they would all be closed off with walls and a door. And Frank Lloyd Wright hated that idea. He wanted to be able to just move. He felt it was just better for there to be this kind of flow throughout an interior. And that's that sort of goes with other ideas from other types of architecture. But it was really, he was really progressive in terms of doing this with residential architecture, because people had to think differently about what it was like, what it was to be in their house. So this floor plan, the lower part here with the dining room, living room, reception, entry, all of that, there's none of that is closed off. The kitchen is closed off, closets, bathrooms, those are closed off. But a big section of this is open plan. Now that open plan, I think people are reconsidering the idea of open plan in the pandemic, because sometimes you just need to be able to get away from everybody and close the door. Really, I find I've worked in offices, all offices are now open plan, and they're terrible to work in. Noisy, it's distracting, and the whole idea of collaboration is just kind of nonsense. It's like, if I want to talk to someone, I'll go over and talk to them. If I need to work, I need privacy. So I need a place to go where I can close the door. It's been lost on so many people. We were at this Harrington when I taught there years ago. We were getting like a new office space designed for full-time faculty. We were in a high-rise, and we had someone from Herman Miller come and interview us about what our needs were. And his idea of a private office was 2 people per enclosed office. And I said, that's not a private office. There's somebody else there. And he kept saying, oh no, well, you can just do your schedule so that you're not there at the same time. I'm like, what if we can't? I don't know, it's just like talking to a brick wall. So yeah, I hope that the pandemic brings an end to open offices, the open plan office, because they stink. That's my personal opinion. Anyway, so here, back to Frank Lloyd Wright. Um, again with this, like, the fireplace, that really nice stuff, and it's a nice fireplace around, and very much like Arts and Crafts and William Morris. And the windows, all those windows are just, he wanted natural light to get in. And, we have this very long horizontal orientation to the house. That was a feature of the prairie style, which is, this falls into prairie style. He was not the only, I guess, prairie school. He was not the only prairie school architect, but he is clearly the best known. There are others who were good, but Frank Lloyd Wright kind of ruled this this style. But you see this like long and horizontal orientation to the house. You can do that in the United States, especially when 110 years ago, 120 years ago, there was a lot more land available, and even now, people want space around them. That's the sort of like what the what we are like. I've been to other parts of the world. I've been to Greece, where everyone wants to be right next to each other, and it's really just a cultural difference. I guess it's just more like there's no space, or less space, and so people just get comfortable. It's the personal bubble is smaller in some parts of the world. So Roby House, lots of windows along that wall, and his furniture, his dining, the dining set here, with the table legs that are also lamp posts, and it's a nice idea. His idea with these tall back chairs is that when you're all sitting around the table, it really sort of creates kind of like a little mini room, and it helps to enclose the space. Those lamps on the corner are kind of an obstacle, and I believe some of his clients had them removed, so you could actually use the table a little bit better. Those chairs are, from what I understand, quite uncomfortable. There's no pitch, which is the angle. See, like this chair in the foreground here, there's an angle to the back, and so it doesn't force you upright. You can actually lounge in it. So he designs the carpet, lighting, furniture, everything. Nice art glass windows. Here is Taliesin in Wisconsin, built later, and I like this, contrasting surfaces where he has that rough stone and the smoother, like the smooth, I guess it originally probably would have been plaster. That smooth wall that runs right up against the rough stone, and really it creates a little bit of tension. Furniture design, you see there is rustication going on here where that stone is left worn. It's left rough.
Is that the one that got burned down? Maybe not all of it, but half of it.
Yes. I'd have to check that. I know one of the Taliesin's, they've only like recently they stopped teaching architecture in these books. It's really meant as this school where a select group of young architecture students would go and study with Frank Lloyd Wright. Mm-hmm. And he created Taliesin West in Arizona, which is also still there.
Oh, so there's more than one?
Yes, there's a Taliesin in Arizona. What they found is that somehow he missed this, this design opportunity. there's something, I guess there are design shortcomings that have to do with how like poorly this architecture works in the winter.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, you could have, it's not as if, I mean, he's from Wisconsin. It's not as if he didn't know it's going to get cold. This arc glass window and I mean, again, this like bringing that window, the glass right up to the stone. There is a little like frame set in there, but in some areas you don't really see the frame. So it's sort of interesting. He liked the idea of, he wanted to obscure, he didn't want to obscure the difference between interior and exterior if he could help it. And this is a really kind of an interesting modern idea, which you can do with more modern materials. The main post office in Chicago is a Mies van der Rohe design. And the granite floor of the interior of the post office extends out and becomes the sidewalk outside the building. And it really looks just like the building was just set down on the plaza. Interesting idea. So public work a little bit. This is Unity Temple in Oak Park. I love the industrial look to it. It also looks kind of like an old Egyptian temple. Here's the interior. You can see this, consistent with his residential architecture in terms of the design, the way he has these sort of like nice off-white surfaces and wooden detail. Larkin Building in Buffalo. Again, this looks like either, it's like an Egyptian temple or some supervillain's lair. You can see it's very massive on the outside. There's a skylight in the middle, and this, like, the interior. This was something that was done in these tall buildings in the 19th century, building a light well. So if you had a building that was tall, and it was just like, multiple floors, 8 stories, 10 stories, 12 stories, or more, interior, the electrical lighting was pretty weak in these days. So lighting the interior of the building was challenging. And the light well allowed natural light to come down the center. So you got this big cavity in the middle of the building, but it allowed you to light the interior with natural light. The Rookery in Chicago has a similar one, but instead of the interior being like this work area, the interior, the middle of the building on the ground floor is this atrium, and there's a skylight, 2 stories above, and then above it is, like this, is exterior, but it's like a big rectangular donut. I recommend visiting the Rookery if you have a chance someday. So he designed the office furniture, lighting, and you can see the open plan here. There are a lot of people in there. That's got to get a little bit loud. Office furniture. So here's the desk. Here's a chair for their cafeteria. There he gave the chair a little bit of pitch and a cushioned seat. Really utilitarian, just like this single board as the back and part of the structure. Not this is probably like more like his budget furniture. and cafeteria. And that's more of a early Frank Lloyd Wright. He did more stuff that comes later. If we have time, I'll show you another show of his later stuff.